Welcome back to the grind. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to play Apocalypse. I'm very excited to have my own Apocalypse now, and so we're going to break down how to use him as a standalone champion, what synergies are very important for him, and then a brief look at what he does for other champions. So if you use your special one with no synergies, you will apply a single debuff, depending on if you finish your combo with a light or medium attack. Ending with a medium attack gets you a poison. Now, using your heavy attack will refresh the debuffs that you get from your special attacks, and this is very important because you do not want them to expire. Now, when you go in and end your combo with a light attack and then throw your special one, you'll apply a weakness debuff, and the same applies. You want to use your heavy attacks to refresh the debuffs so that you can keep them active for later on in the fight, which we will get to shortly. You'll also notice that there is a lot of red numbers. So each debuff you have active increases the amount of damage that you deal over time. So that's why you want to keep those buffs active. You also want to chain on as many heavy attacks as you can because you do get some good bleed damage. And while the opponent is bleeding, when you throw your special attacks, the debuffs will apply on the activation of your special attacks. So you'll see throughout this fight, I work to create spacing so I can chain on as many heavy attacks as possible. Now we're gonna build up to a second special 2 so we can get the second debuff from the special 2. Now, chaining on all these heavy attacks is not required for Apocalypse, but you do have to make sure you refresh those debuffs. I like doing as many heavy attacks as possible because of the bleed damage, and I have found that it actually helps the fight go a bit quicker and with less hits. Now we're getting our fourth and final debuff from our special attacks, and you may notice all the extra red burst damage that we're getting from each of our special attack hits, which is because of all the extra debuffs that we have. Now, the goal is to make sure these do not expire and build up to a special 3. When we activate our special 3, we're going to double the potency of all the debuffs that are currently active and make those debuffs from special attacks permanent. Now, it did take 100 hits to get up to this fully ramped position with Apocalypse when not using any synergies, so that is something to keep in mind. He does take a while to build up to that damage potential. So he is a little bit more useful for endgame content, but look at the debuffs which are now permanent, so we do not have to worry about them expiring. This is going to allow us to have the continued damage over time throughout the fight without worrying about refreshing it, but also throwing in heavy attacks along the way is still helpful. And we're going to get that increased burst damage from the special attacks, which you'll see here. Each special attack hit is dealing an extra 2.6 and then at the end 3.1 burst damage. Now, both special attacks are very satisfying to activate, but my question was, since you're getting a lot of burst damage from the special 1 still, maybe it would be better to just chain on special 1s because you can do twice as many of them. So I decided I wanted to make a comparison of that, but let's see how many hits it took for this rank 4 5-star Apocalypse to finish off, and we're just waiting for that degen damage or damage over time damage to tick away at the end, which is another nice thing. You don't technically have to attack in order to get damage dealt to the opponent. So it was over 200 hits, which is not great, but I have seen worse numbers from a rank 5 5-star, so it's not bad either. Now, when you go to the next fight, you'll see I have 2 persistent charges. So you get a persistent charge from defeating a fight as long as it's not a robot. And you get more benefits for having more persistent charges. For each persistent charge you have, you'll gain a passive prowess at the start of the fight, increasing special attack damage by 40. When you have 3 of these persistent charges, you will be stun immune while striking the opponent. And when you have 4 of these charges, a light attack can stun the opponent for 0.8 seconds, but it has a 12-second cooldown, and this will allow you to get openings when the opponent is playing more defensive. So we'll take a look at that shortly. Now, he also becomes Bleed, Incinerate, and Disorient immune if affected for 8 seconds by those debuffs. For each evade the champion has, you'll decrease the next evade chance by 10, and then he also prevents Purify ability accuracy. So any opponent that shrugs off debuffs and stuns will no longer be able to do that. So Agent, Venom, and Crossbones, you'll be able to parry, and all your debuffs will stay on the opponent, so you will not have to worry about that. Now, the Horseman of the Apocalypse is when you spend 4 genetic code as a pre-fight, the next mutant that goes in gets all of these listed benefits, plus some champions have specific benefits that go alongside that. And we'll briefly touch on that at the end of the video, but that is a whole nother video in and of itself. The main synergy I want to focus on is actually for Apocalypse himself, and that is to allow him to have all 4 of his charges at the start of the fight, which allows him all of his utility. And that is either with Mr. Sinister, Kang, or Cable. And Cable also has a great synergy as well, making him very useful in content in addition to that, not only as a synergy piece. But with this, you get both of the buffs from your special attacks from throwing a single special attack. So this significantly decreases the ramp up time for getting him there. Also, when you attack into a block with a light attack, it will stun the opponent, allowing you to chain on heavy attacks or even just get ins when they're being defensive. So now we've done 1 special 1 and 1 special 2, giving us all 4 of the buffs that we need, and then we just have to keep them active with heavy attacks until we build up to a special 3. So you can see it cuts down on the ramp up time, and it only took us about 75 to 80 hits in order to get to that special 3, which allows us to shorten the time to ramp up, making him a little bit more fun and usable in shorter fights. But even more than just having the double debuffs is being able to attack into the block and chain on a stun, which I do enjoy. Now, in this clip, I'm finishing off the fight using only special 2s to see the damage comparison. When I really broke down the numbers, adding them up, it seemed about the same, or I should say the special 1 deals about half the damage the special 2 does, but it really depends on crits. Now with the special 1, you have more chances to crit, so you might have a better time hitting the average. But for this clip, going to only special 2s, I filled 5 bars of power after the special 3, took 149 hits, and took about 3 minutes. Now in these clips, this next clip is actually only using special 1s after the special 3, and in both of these I ended up around 60% when I came out of the special 3. Now I tried to limit using heavy attacks in both of these clips because the amount of heavy attacks that you can chain on is very dependent on fight to fight, depending on how the AI works with you. So I wanted to limit using heavy attacks to have a little bit of a more standard fight. So you can see, depending on the crit, you'll get a different, obviously, damage outcome, but I only ended up using 4 special attacks, so 4 bars of power, 135 hits, and saved about 10 to 15 seconds on that fight. And in the fights that I was using heavy attacks as much as possible, I did have it under 120 hits sometimes, so I do think that's the best way. This is just one example to show the Apocalypse synergies and how they make other champions great, especially if you make them a Horseman of the Apocalypse. So Storm can stack infinite amounts of shock debuffs, and that is by landing heavy attacks. Each hit of the heavy attack has a chance to apply a new one, and each time you apply a new one, it refreshes the old ones, so you can stack up massive amounts of shock damage and shock debuffs. And remember, I think this is only a rank 2 5-star, and we have a shock debuff ticking for, we're going to get up to over 4,000. And if you chain on special attacks, there are other synergies that allow you to increase special attack damage as well. But look at that shock damage ticking away, and this is just one example of how Apocalypse makes other mutant champions incredible. But that is a whole nother topic for a whole nother video in and of itself, which I will look forward to making in the future. So I do hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any comments or questions or tips in the comment section below, and I hope to see you in the next video.